a big part of gaining the right clients is being able to portray who you are, what's important to you, where your passions lie. I think if you can do that and you can show that you are just a regular person, you're out there trying to do the best you can. This is what your passion is. This is what you're excited about. You can then attract the same type of people, and those are the people you want to work with.
Welcome to the Pet Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Skarlet Rockwood. As a content marketer for pet professionals, I love talking with other marketers and business owners in the pet industry and sharing their marketing advice with you. So join me for the latest episode and learn how to grow your audience, increase your revenue, and impact the lives of pets and their people. Michelle Connor is a professional photographer specializing in environmental pet portraiture. She's been in this industry for 16 years, starting out in the wedding and portrait business and then moving to Nashville to pursue environmental pet portraiture. She was an editorial photographer for Nashville Paw magazine for several years and now splits her time between building a brand for a local veterinary and rehabilitation hospital and her photography business. Her biggest passion is working with rescues and lending her talents to celebration of life sessions. Hey, Michelle, thank you so much for joining us. I am really excited to talk with you today about kind of your journey as a pet photographer and also how you've used that to help brands kind of understand brand storytelling through the visuals that are photography. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Skarlet. Good to be here.
So just to start off, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be a pet photographer.
Yeah. So I've been in the photography business for about 16 years. I started out doing weddings like most photographers. I did weddings, I did senior portraits, I did events, pretty much anything I could get my hands on. And then when I moved to Nashville, I actually wanted to focus on my passion, which was pet photography. And I've always been involved with animal rescue and the veterinary industry a little bit on the side. And so animals were just the perfect fit for me. And I think in photography, it's easy to be very broad and have a lot of different areas that you work in. But if you can kind of hone in on one specialty, that really makes you stand out. So pet photography is kind of my specialty, and I actually kind of call it editorial pet photography because I've done a lot for magazine work. So that's my focus, that's my niche, that's what I think works best to get me noticed in this area, because Nashville is a big city and we've got a lot of photographers in the area.
Yeah, you definitely want to differentiate yourself. I felt the same way as a social media marketer. I was working, for pretty much any brand. I hadn't narrowed down a niche. And for me, having my first pet brand as a client is what made me realize I wanted to work specifically in the pet industry. So I started gearing all my marketing towards getting pet clients. What was it that made the decision for you? Did you have a pet photo session that you just loved that much, or what happened?
I honestly just always loved animals. And I know this sounds really silly, but with clients, I mean, not to say that I didn't have amazing clients, I really did, but people are very opinionated. People are not always, they're kind of nitpicky with how they look. And I'm the same way. You won't find me in front of a camera. This is actually really rare for me. So with pets, they're just happy to be there. They just have this energy about them that, like you can do no wrong with an animal, and they love you unconditionally. And I think with my rescue work was probably what triggered me wanting to be in that industry. Just being able to tell an animal's story, and this kind of goes along with branding, telling an animal's story who can't speak for themselves, just putting that out there and helping them get adopted, helping them find the right family and the right home. They can't speak, so you're kind of their voice, and I really loved that. And so I've always worked with rescues, and when I moved here, I specifically partnered with a magazine, Nashville Paw magazine, that really focused on rescue work and doing work within the community. And so that's where I kind of rambled on there, but I started out right after photography school in working, wanting to work for National Geographic. So I think nature, animals, all of that sort of was always in my blood. That was something that I've always wanted to do, but I didn't really get to test that out until I graduated from photography school, and then started my business and started working with rescues in the area. So
that's really awesome. So you were with Nashville Paw Magazine and you were the editorial photographer there, right?
yes, so I photographed all of their covers, any events that they did. I was usually there photographing all the events, documenting. Which event photography and wedding photography, very similar kind of fields. So that helped me. My background with weddings really helped me with events, and I really got to know and market and network with different people in the pet industry through the magazine. So that was really helpful. And I worked with some of their sponsors, some of their donors, went around to different pet industry businesses, just people that loved the rescue community, and helped tell their story. Again, kind of ties in with branding, just through photography. So if they were sponsoring an ad in the magazine that month, I would go out to their business, get to know them, talk about what their vision is, how they want to represent themselves through the community, to the community, and then try to show that in, just sometimes even just a half-page ad. So that's kind of tough. And I think every business sort of struggles with that sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Especially in the pet industry, there's always so much story to tell there, and doing that, just through visuals, can be challenging. I imagine with just the half-page ad, it's even more so, because at least with social media and things like that, you get seen over and over and over again. So your consistency adds to the ability to tell that story.
Yeah.
But what would you tell a company or a pet brand that was trying to kind of nail down their visual branding when it comes to photography?
Yeah. I would say, well, for me, I can kind of go back to, I try to bring it back to myself as being a client and try to look at it through that lens. So for me, there's so many other photographers out there, so many other people in my industry. So how do I get noticed? And I think the first part is, who are you as a business owner? What do you want to portray? What kind of clients do you want to attract? That's the big one. So again, for me, rescue work was so important. So I really focused on that specifically. If I can just give an example, this is probably a little bit easier for me, but I worked with a wine and spirits company that they adopted their first dog from a local rescue. And they were really big on community, really big on that, and that side of things. So they wanted to focus on giving back to their local rescue, and that was their main thing. So they actually partnered with a local rescue, and that was sort of their story, was their dog, and where they got their dog, how they got their dog. This is like their soulmate. They really wanted to portray that, and it really resonated with everybody else in the area that had adopted dogs or cats, or worked with that specific rescue, or knew somebody that worked with that rescue. And so they actually gained a lot of clients just from that. And they were able to kind of share their heart and tell their story, just through just honing in on what was important to them. Because I think a big part of gaining the right clients is being able to portray who you are, what's important to you, where your passions lie. I think if you can do that, and you can show that you are just a regular person, you're out there trying to do the best you can. This is what your passion is. This is what you're excited about. You can then attract the same type of people, and those are the people you want to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. So just using that example, how did you go about that for them? I have to imagine that it's a little bit more complicated than just putting dogs in the photos, right?
Right.
How did you actually show, what they were going for in the images?
Yeah. So that particular shoot, I actually went to their house. So the business owners, they lived in a small community where everybody knew them. So it was a little bit easier. That I don't know that they necessarily needed the marketing, but it was really nice they wanted to tell their story. I think that was the most important thing. So we went to their house, spent like half a day with them and just kind of followed them around, took pictures of them taking their dog to the park, took pictures of them. Like, I think they even brought a bottle of wine and they just went to the park and had a picnic with their dog. And they had little like other friends that they knew from the dog park that would come and visit. And so it was like a picnic with just showing community, showing love of animals, love of rescue. And then they had their wine that of course they sell. So that was part of the business aspect. But and then we went to their business and kind of spent the rest of the day there and just showcasing their heart within the community and how much they give back. That's a big one too. So if you're a business that gives back to your community, showcase that. Like, I know that can be kind of, you can almost feel like you're bragging, and I've learned that sometimes you just have to put that out there and you'll get a really good response. So that was helpful.
Yes, that is one of the things that I tell my clients all the time, or my students, telling people that you are giving back to your community, or if you have some sort of cause that you're passionate about, that is so important because, like you said, sometimes they are shy to share it, but don't quote me on the number, but I believe it's something like 78% of people are more likely to pick a brand because they agree with the cause that brand supports over a different brand that either doesn't have a cause or has one they don't necessarily care as much about.
Exactly.
So yeah, you definitely absolutely want to share that. That's really important.
And it kind of goes against what we naturally want to do. Like, if you're doing something good for someone else or for your community, you don't necessarily want to throw that out there because it can come across as bragging, but it is important. I mean, you think about like when I was looking for a photographer to shoot my own wedding, I was looking for somebody. I mean, I knew so many photographers in the area, and there's so many wonderful photographers that are very skilled and talented. But I was looking for photographers that could really tell my love story. Like, I know that sounds so cheesy, but that's what I was looking for. And I ended up going with a couple that was married that had been doing weddings together for years. The husband did videography, the wife did photography, and they just had such a unique way of portraying someone's love story and like seeing their love in a different way that was unexpected and different. It was just, I don't know how to describe it. It was really endearing. That was really how I picked my own photographer. So I kind of try to look at it from that perspective too, and always going back again, thinking as a potential client, who would I be most attracted to? Who am I connecting with on that level? And that's sort of how I pick most people that I work with.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's kind of what I try to do. I have a photographer that, is basically my brand photographer whenever I need photos. And she also does photography with me for our local rescue. I basically pick the animal that's been there the longest and I take him out for the day to the park and we take pictures and hopefully show his personality a little bit better and tell his story in a way that, he can get adopted. So that is something that I don't actually think of for myself, as well as I feel like I do a better job when I'm trying to think about the rescue and like telling the dog story. I feel like I do a better job. And I think a lot of people feel like it's harder when they're trying to tell their own story versus someone else's. And that's where I think it's really beneficial to get somebody from the outside to come in and hear your story and, help you tell it in a way.
Right, because there's so many times where you don't really see that you might not see the spark that you have as a business owner, and someone with a fresh pair of eyes from the outside can come in and be like, oh, that really sets you apart. That's really interesting. Your audience wants to know that. They would love to see that, and they'd love to hear more about it. And even just how you got into the business that you're in sometimes is a really interesting story that people discount. that was the first question you asked me, and I think I got excited and I probably breezed past it. I don't even know what I said at this point, but um, I did, when I started out right after school, I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any friends in the industry outside of my classmates. And so I was an apprentice for a year with a big company that did editorial photography. And just through that, like I learned, that's where I sort of helped learn where my focus was. And I do tell a lot of photographers, photography school is not for everybody. And I don't necessarily recommend that for everyone. I think that it was really cool in the fact that you can be self-taught and you can learn so much on your own, and just having a lot of those industry friends. And if you're in the pet industry specifically, networking with people outside of photography, just networking with people that are doing other things within that industry is really important, and finding some mentors too. So that's really important. But all that to say, I have a note here and I'm trying not to like stare at my other side of my screen and be rude, but I feel like I need to look at my note. On the subject of finding your focus, when you feel like you're in an oversaturated field in particular, kind of identifying who you are, what you have to offer, what sets you apart, what's your passion. Do you have a niche? Do you have something that's like a specialized segment of your market, a lane and a focus that you can go towards that's really going to help you with your brand? I went through personally like different areas in my life over 16 years where I had different focuses, and none of that really brought me like true passion until I got into working with animals. And that's where I knew I was in the right spot. I was in the right place for me. And it took a long time to get there. And I think 12 years of photographing weddings. And I got really burnt out. I think it's easy to get burnt out. And even if you find your passion, you find that thing that sets you apart, really cultivating it, really protecting it, so that you don't get burnt out on something that you're really passionate about. I don't know. I know as an artist, as a creative, somebody in that field, that's really easy to happen. So I don't know if you've experienced that. You're nodding like you have. So
Oh yeah.
I feel like that's pretty common.
It's pretty much the same for me. It's been 7 years now since I started my social media agency. And I started out, my first customer was a health food grocery store. I've had pharmaceutical companies, I've had doctors, I've had coffee shops and restaurants. I've even had like landscaping companies. It was all over the place. But once I got that client that was a pet industry client, it was a supplement it was not CBD, but it was like the same lane. It was like a growth hormone supplement that helped with basically the same things. But working not just for that client, but also becoming a part of that industry and like getting immersed in the pet industry in that community, that was where it really clicked. And it just became so much easier to work on like client work, because I actually was passionate about it, like you said. Whereas before it's like, I could not give two craps about what kind of chemical you use on someone's lawn. I'm sure your customers do, but I don't. But with my clients in the pet industry, I care just as much as the people I'm talking to. And that really does make a difference. Not just in not getting burnt out, but also in like putting out better content, because I actually believe what I'm talking about. So yeah, I definitely feel that. And you can still get burnt out. I don't know, I know people who follow me on social media have probably heard me talk about it. Maybe not people who have only listened to the podcast. I may not have talked about it that much yet, but I have executive dysfunction, which is basically a mental block that makes it really easy to get burnt out and really difficult to like do anything in an ongoing fashion. Like there will be days where you just wake up and you just can't move, no matter how important whatever you have to do that day is. So I definitely understand burnout, and it's definitely very, very important that you are passionate about what you do.
Yeah.
And yeah, and like you said, not to get too far off on a tangent there, coming back to just talking about, differentiating yourself and how knowing who you are and who you're talking to and your brand is so important. Actually, I think this episode is going to come out right after, or maybe just two after, a very branding specific episode. So if you're not catching that one, make sure you go back and listen to that one as well, because branding, knowing what your brand is and who you are as a company, is kind of the first step, like you were saying,
Yeah.
to telling your story and knowing what your visual should look like, because it's not just the quality of the photo that matters, it's how much it resonates with the person that you're trying to reach, right?
Right. One style of photography that is really common in my work, specifically, that I utilize when I'm working with other businesses and I'm trying to showcase their brand, is environmental portraiture. And that's something I learned when I was in college, and didn't even realize I was learning it. I actually was merging my love of landscape photography. Again, that's where that National Geographic thing comes in. But my love of landscapes, I was merging it with, originally with my subjects, which were people, before I started working with animals. Then it was animals, and then it was within the rescue community. Just again, like using your environment to tell a story. So you're storytelling through just a portrait, and that's really hard to do. But if you can figure out how to do it, and you can, again, you can kind of, if you know the businesses, their heart, like their true heart, if you can sit down with a business owner, and you can talk to them about why did they start the business? What is their focus? What is their mission? What are their goals? Who are the people they're trying to reach? All of those things. And like you said, branding is the first step, and being true to your brand and sticking with that. So even if it takes you a long time to figure out what your brand is, once you figured it out, really protect it, really run with it, and kind of keep it consistent, because that's how you're going to keep building that fan base, and you're going to keep building that clientele. And the right clientele is, they're just going to follow you, and they're going to be like, oh, I just want to learn more about this business. I want to learn more about, I want to help them grow. I want to tell my friends about them. That's what you're going for. So that's what I try to do with my work. It's not always the easiest, but I feel like you can't really walk in. Like if somebody hired me and I walked in and I didn't even hear their story first, and I just tried to make nice pictures and create some good portraits, that's what I used to do back when I worked, like when I was my first 5 years of being a photographer. It wasn't so much about getting to know the subject and getting to know what their story is and portraying it. It was more just making beautiful photography, and beautiful photographs. But there's a big difference in what I do now than what I did when I first started out.
So how do we avoid, if we're hiring a photographer, or if we're kind of being introspective of ourselves, if we're taking photos for our pet company, how do we avoid doing that? How do we make sure that we either hire the right person or put ourselves in the right mindset to get storytelling photos instead of just nice quality images?
Yeah, I think one of the things you can do is, if you're looking at someone's website, you're looking at the images, and I'm just kind of like on my other side of my screen here, I'm flipping through my own website so I can actually be true to what I'm saying here. But I think if you're just looking at images and they evoke something, a feeling from you and an emotion from you, I think that's the first step. Is if you're looking at a visual image and it's bringing some kind of emotion out of you, that's a good storytelling photographer. That's somebody that I would want to work with. And I wouldn't be afraid to ask them questions. Ask them all the questions that they're hopefully going to ask you. How did you get into the business? What are your passions? What's your favorite part about photography? What sets you apart from every other photographer in the city? And why should I choose you? And I think that that's a fair thing. Those are fair questions to ask, especially if you're going to put your brand and your image in the hands of someone else, and you're going to be asking them to help tell your story. just making sure that they're passionate about working with you specifically.
Yeah, that is so important. I remember, now that you're talking about, asking them questions, I didn't even really think I intended to, but I basically ended up interviewing a few different photographers when I was looking for the one I work with now. And it was more so just, calling them to see what they had available, what their rates were, but, it became a conversation. And I remember talking to one that was promising at first, but she said, I love animals so much, I'm not sure I could work with someone that's so closely working with a shelter and take photographies for a shelter, because every time I walk in, I'd start bawling. And she's like, I want to take all of them home. I'd just be sad that day. And I'm like, maybe it's not a good fit then, because I do want somebody who can come in with me and, take all the photos. And then the person I work with now, despite the fact that like there's a few different, she's not full-time, she only photographs on Saturdays. So there's a couple scheduling challenges there, but I still picked her anyway because she was able to, she was like, dude, I'll do that part for free. Like, I'll take your photos, but like, send me to the shelter. I'll take photos for them. I just want to help just as much as you do. And like, I knew that was the right energy that we needed, because we need somebody who's excited and happy to bring that out of the animals and like tell their story without necessarily like going home and then being sad when they're editing the photos. I don't want to ruin somebody's day, right?
Right.
So yeah, asking questions of your photographer. And then also, like, if you yourself are taking photos for your brand because you're between sessions, or you're just taking some candid photos for your social media, you can ask yourself the same questions. I imagine things like, what is the purpose of this image? Like, am I going to use it for promoting a specific product? Am I trying to tell the story of what you're going to use this product for? I'm thinking of one client I have right now where they have some photos that are just collars and leashes on a white background that are for their website, but then they also have some photos. They've done a really great job with their brand photography. And they also have photos of like them them out hiking with dogs using the same collars and leashes.
Right.
And they also
you can visualize you can visualize your own pet wearing that product and seeing like actual lifestyle photos. That's what I would probably call it. But yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly. Because they're a brand that does cater a lot towards their customers who are like not just walking their dog around the block. They're going out for hikes. They're going to the lake. They want to be able to use long lines or drag lines to basically be almost leash free walking as much as possible when they're out in the woods and things like that. So they show all of those things in their photos. So you literally could just insert your dog doing the exact same thing. And it's a really great way to show the use of the product and have people imagine using it in their own lives. So that's just one example of how, like, don't just take only flat lays. I see that with a lot of product companies. There's lots of white backgrounds, there's lots of flat lays. I'm like, this is great, but like, show me the leash on a walk, show me the bandana on a dog, like, and be thoughtful of what kind of dog. Like, is your bandana for a golden doodle who's on the beach, or is your bandana for a pit bull in the city? Like, this could be something that's brand specific or even product specific for different designs.
Right.
So
visualizing, it's kind of your job to help somebody quickly visualize their life or their dog or themselves in that product or with that product. So that's, again, that storytelling aspect of it that sometimes people can forget about, and they just want a pretty image, or they just want to show off the product. But you do have to do it in a way that's thoughtful of your client, your potential client or customer. We do that. I do that a lot with the veterinary hospital that I work with, and with our rehabilitation center. We have some pretty high-end clients. We have some clients that really they seek us out specifically because of who we are and our story. And so every time I'm posting on their behalf, I'm always trying to give them a glimpse, like an extra little glimpse of who we are and what our mission is, and just behind the scenes of our staff even. We have so many people that I work with that are passionate about animals, and they work so hard every day, and they have burnout. They're dealing with burnout. They're dealing with compassion fatigue in the veterinary industry, which is a very real thing, not just in vet medicine, but in the pet industry as a whole, I think. You mentioned burnout earlier, and I was going to actually piggyback off of that and say compassion fatigue in the pet industry is a real thing to be aware of too, because we care so much about animals. We care so much about what we do. So I think whenever I'm posting on behalf of the clinic, I'm just trying to give everybody like almost like you're cracking the door open and you're looking behind the scenes of that business, and it gives people a sense of transparency too, which I mean, I know that the younger generation, and I don't even know if you call them millennials now. I don't know what the generation is, but
It is
everybody
Gen Z
wants,
now. I'm a
yeah,
millennial. I'm
Gen
an
Z.
adult.
Okay, yeah. So but you know what I mean? Like everybody feels entitled to an extent for us to have some form of transparency with the businesses that they work with and businesses that they buy from. So that's a real thing too, and that's a challenge with branding. And you can't always show people everything, but if you can at least portray your heart and your reason for doing what you're doing and selling the product that you're selling, or the service that you're selling, that's going to gain you a lot of followers. It's going to gain you a lot of traction.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is both millennials and Gen Z. It did start kind of among the millennial generation of wanting to get to know the people that you're dealing with and doing business, understanding that we psychologically want to do business with people.
Right.
And knowing those people, or even just feeling like we know those people, does make us more attached and loyal to a company. And, you know, people think of that as, well, that's just the teenagers. But no, guys, millennial, like I'm 32. Millennials are getting up there. Like that's a lot of your audience. And Gen Z is the same, if not more hardcore on like wanting to feel like they're connected to the places they do business with. And this is something that I like to talk about called the parasocial relationship, which is when we see people, started out obviously on like radio and TV when we see celebrities, but it's come along now. This is why influencers are such a successful marketing tool as well, because the more we see a person, hear their voice, read the things they've written, like on their social media, or watch them on TV, it develops what we call a parasocial relationship, which is you feel like they're your friend. You feel like you know them, even though they don't know you. And it takes up the same space in your brain as someone that you are friends with. And that's why having a face behind your brand is so important. And that's why so many brands that are too big to really put their CEO front and center have started creating mascots, like, you know, the 𝐊𝐼𝐒 and things like that. Like that's why that strategy is so successful, because even if it's not a person, right, we still all know who the 𝐊𝐼𝐒 is, and we kind of like feel like whatever we feel about him, you know, maybe you think he's somebody that I would be friends with someone who had this personality, or maybe you don't, but you feel like that mascot is a person. Or, you know, I don't know why I'm stuck on car insurance right now, but like Flo from Progressive and her whole little crew, like they've even expanded that to be like a little team to where you can pick which one you like the best, because they know it works really well to have a personality and a what feels like a human that you're thinking of when you think of that brand.
And you're connecting with them. Yeah,
exactly. So even now, like if I see a Geico commercial that doesn't have the gecko in it, I'm like, who are you?
What is it?
Who am I talking to? State Farm has Jake. Let's see, they've all done it now.
It's true.
But yeah, so definitely like think about letting people behind the scenes a little bit, because, you know, before you talked about compassion fatigue, I was thinking about like the pictures of what does it feel like to be in your veterinary office? Like what can I expect from the experience? That's the sort of thing that I would want to put into a social media strategy, but also, yeah, what is that behind the scenes? You know, what are you doing when you go home at the end of the day? Like, how are you feeling about your day as my veterinarian? Like, do you think about I have a rabbit, his name is Houdini. Like, do you think about Houdini after the visit, or have you forgotten him until the next thing? Like, those are little things. And veterinarians who talk about, you know, obviously with permission, talk about specific patients where the experience was something that touched them are the ones that I think get a lot of success in their marketing and social media, because they let you into who they are as a person, and they convince you that, you know, they do care about the results of your visit.
Yeah. And for this particular veterinary clinic that I work with, our tagline, or our mission, our slogan, whatever you want to call it, is really treat everyone like family. We want people to, when they come in with their pet, first of all, we want them to feel like they're not walking into a cold veterinary clinic. It is a warm, inviting atmosphere, and everyone, I mean, every time a dog or a puppy walks in, we have 5 people on the floor greeting them, just going crazy, raving about their pet, just making that experience very unique and different, and unlike anything they've ever experienced before at a veterinary hospital. And then probably the biggest feedback, because I deal with our reputation management as well, so that's another big side of what I do. So hearing directly from clients and hearing their feedback, whether it's positive or negative. And one of the things that we hear the most often is, you treated my dog like he was one of your own, like he was your family. And so that has become sort of the focus of the brand. That's what we want to convey. That's what we're trying. Every time somebody comes in, that's what we want them to feel. So that's really important. And that's one of the main things that myself and the owner and the practice manager talked about right off the bat, is what are the feelings you want to convey to your customers and your clients. And that was really the staple. That was the thing that we honed in on. And then from there, the rest was easy, because we were like, okay, family is a big thing. So we want to showcase all of our staff. We want to make people, like you said, feel like, you know, this person, you see their face every time you walk into their business. You want to feel connected. You want to feel like you can peek behind the curtain and see a little bit about their life, and what they're passionate about, why they are working for this business, why they show up every day and they endure 12-hour shifts. Like, this is why, because they truly care about animals. They care about your animal, and they are treating your pet like they would treat their own. So that's part of that storytelling. And every time that I post, I'm not just trying to post a pretty picture. I'm trying to tell that story and kind of further that storyline.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also why when I'm doing content planning with clients, I try to start with you know, they might have folders of hundreds and hundreds of either brand photos or even user generated content. But I always like to start with, what is this post about, before I pick a photo for it, because I want to tell the story of what we're posting about and what our purpose is. I don't usually want to start with the photo and then just make something up for it, because that is just going for, well, this is a pretty photo. Every once in a while, a pretty photo is nice. And maybe I want to share that particular client and talk about their story. So I start with the photo, but most of the time it is, even when I'm doing social media strategy, you start with the story, and then if you have to go out and take the photo, get the photo after. Yeah. So how can someone, if anyone wants to ask you any questions about this episode, or talk to you about maybe helping them with their photography, where can we find you?
Yeah, so my website is Michelle Conner, and that's CONNER.com, MichelleConner.com. And then you can find me on Instagram at Michelle Conner Photographer, and same with Facebook. So I'm very responsive to email. You can also email me, Michelle@MichelleConner.com. All pretty easy ways to find me. I'm very open to networking, and just, even if you're not trying to hire me for something, you just have a question. If you're a fellow person in the industry, whether you're a photographer, business owner, rescue worker, anything. I'm happy to answer any questions or help you out in any way that I can. I worked with so many different businesses, and it's the same thing. It's everyone. I feel like that's the biggest struggle, is just finding your focus, deciding on your mission, your core value, like what do you want to portray to the community, to your community? What do you want to put out there? What do you want people to know about you? And then, so that's the hardest part. And that's where somebody like, I feel like where somebody like you comes in. And then I'm here to take all the amazing photos to help tell your story. And if I can do that, then I'm doing my job. And I'm happy to help any way that I can. So if anyone has any questions, I'll do my best to help and answer.
Awesome. So thank you again so much for joining us for this episode of the Pet Marketing Podcast. Again, I'm Skarlet Rockwood. Thank you so much. Don't forget to be awesome, and I'll see you in the next video. What was your favorite thing about this episode? Hit me up on Instagram at Skarlet Rockwood to tell me about it, or ask any questions that you have about marketing your own pet business. If you know other pet professionals who would love this podcast, go ahead and screenshot this episode and share it to your Instagram stories. Be sure to tag me when you do, because seeing who's listening and hearing your feedback is 100% what motivates me to keep doing what I do. You can also join the Content Marketing for Pet Professionals Facebook group to connect with other pet industry professionals like you. If you'd like to follow up on any of the resources or links mentioned in this episode, you can find them in the show notes. Don't forget to be awesome, and I'll see you in the next episode.